The First Book of Kings, Chapter 1. Now King David was old and stricken in years, and they covered him with clothes, but he got no heat. Therefore his servants said to him, Let there be sought for my lord the king a young virgin, and let her stand before the king and cherish him, and let her lie in your bosom, that my lord the king may keep warm. So they sought for a beautiful young lady throughout all the borders of Israel, and found Abishag the Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The young lady was very beautiful, and she cherished the king and ministered to him, but the king didn't know her intimately. Then Adonijah the son of Haggith exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And he prepared chariots and horsemen, and 50 men to run before him. His father had not displeased him at any time, saying, Why have you done this? And he was also a very handsome man, and he was born after Absalom. He conferred with Joab the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they, following Adonijah, helped him. But Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and Nathan the prophet, and Shimei, and Rei, and the mighty men who belonged to David, were not with Adonijah. Adonijah killed sheep and oxen and fatlings by the stone of Zoheleth, which is beside in Regel. And he called all his brothers the king's sons, and all the men of Judah the king's servants. But Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, and the mighty men, and Solomon his brother he didn't call. Then Nathan spoke to Bathsheba the mother of Solomon, saying, Haven't you heard that Adonijah the son of Haggith reigns, and David our Lord doesn't know it? Now therefore come, please let me give you counsel that you may save your own life, and the life of your son Solomon. Go and hurry in to King David and tell him, Didn't you, my lord king, swear to your handmaid, saying, Assuredly Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then does Adonijah reign? Behold, while you yet there talk with the king, I also will come in behind you and confirm your words. Bathsheba went into the king's chamber, and the king was very old, and Abishag the Shunammite was ministering to the king. Bathsheba bowed, and did homage to the king. The king said, What do you want? She said to him, My lord, you swore by the Lord your God to your handmaid, saying, Assuredly Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne. Now behold, Adonijah reigns, and you, my lord the king, don't know it, and he has slain oxen and fatlings and sheep in abundance, and has called all the sons of the king, and Abiathar the priest, and Joab the captain of the host, but he hasn't called Solomon your servant. You, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, that you should tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it will happen, when my lord the king shall sleep with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon shall be counted offenders. While she yet talked with the king, Nathan the prophet came in. They told the king, saying, Behold, Nathan the prophet. When he was come to before the king, he bowed himself before the king with his face to the ground. Nathan said, My lord the king, have you said Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? For he is gone down this day, and has slain oxen and fatlings and sheep in abundance, and has called all the king's sons, and the captains of the host, and Abiathar the priest, and behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and say, Long live King Adonijah. But he hasn't called me, even me your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon. Is this thing done by my lord the king, and you haven't shown to your servants who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him? Then King David answered, Call to me Bathsheba. She came into the king's presence and stood before the king. The king swore and said, As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my soul out of all adversity, most assuredly as I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he will sit on my throne in my place. Most assuredly I will do so this day. Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the earth, and did homage to the king, and said, Let my lord King David live forever. King David said, Call to me Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada. they came before the king. The king said to them, "Take with you the servants of your lord, and call Solomon my son to ride on my own mule, and bring him down to Gihon. And let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him their king over Israel, and blow the trumpet, and say, Long live King Solomon. Then you shall come up after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne, for he shall be king in my place, and I have appointed him to be prince over Israel and over Judah." Benaiah the son of Jehoiada answered the king and said, "Amen. The Lord, the God of my lord the king, says, Amen. As the Lord has been with my lord the king, even so be he with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David." So Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites went down and caused Solomon to ride on King David's mule, and brought him to Gihon. Zadok the priest took the horn of oil out of the tent, and anointed Solomon. They blew the trumpet, and all the people said, "Long live King Solomon." All the people came up after him, and the people piped with pipes, and rejoiced with great joy, so that the earth shook with the sound of them. Adonijah and all the guests who were with him heard it as they made an end of eating. When Joab heard the sound of the trumpet, he said, "Why is this noise of the city being in an uproar?" While he yet spoke, behold, Jonathan the son of Abiathar the priest came, and Adonijah said, "Come in, for you are a worthy man, and bring good news." Jonathan answered Adonijah, "Most assuredly our lord King David has made Solomon king, and the king has sent with him Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and they have caused him to ride on the king's mule. And Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king in Gihon, and they are come up from there rejoicing, so that the city rang again. This is the noise that you have heard. Also Solomon sits on the throne of the kingdom." Moreover, the king's servants came to bless our lord King David, saying, "Your God make the name of Solomon better than your name, and make his throne greater than your throne." And the king bowed himself on the bed. Also thus said the king, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has given one to sit on my throne this day, my eyes even seeing it." All the guests of Adonijah were afraid, and rose up, and went every man his way. Adonijah feared because of Solomon, and he arose and went and caught hold of the horns of the altar. It was told Solomon, saying, "Behold, Adonijah fears King Solomon, for he has laid hold on the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me first that he will not kill his servant with the sword." Solomon said, "If he shall show himself a worthy man, there shall not a hair of him fall to the earth. But if wickedness be found in him, he shall die." So King Solomon sent, and they brought him down from the altar. He came and did homage to King Solomon, and Solomon said to him, "Go to your house." Chapter 2. Now the days of David drew near that he should die, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, "I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong therefore, and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes and his commandments and his ordinances and his testimonies, according to that which is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do, and wherever you turn yourself, that the Lord may establish his word, which he spoke concerning me, saying, If your children take heed to their way, to walk before me in truth with all their heart and with all their soul, there shall not fail you a man on the throne of Israel. Moreover, you know also what Joab the son of Zeruiah did to me, even what he did to the 2 captains of the host of Israel, to Abner the son of Ner, and to Amasa the son of Jether, whom he killed, and shed the blood of war in peace, and put the blood of war on his sash that was about his loins, and in his shoes that were on his feet. Do therefore according to your wisdom, and don't let his gray head go down to Sheol in peace. But show kindness to the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite, and let them be of those who eat at your table. For they came to me when I fled from Absalom your brother. Behold, there is with you Shimei the son of Gera the Benjamite of Bahurim, who cursed me with a great curse in the day when I went to Mahanaim, but he came down to meet me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by the Lord, saying, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now therefore don't hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man, and you will know what you ought to do to him, and you shall bring his gray head down to Sheol with blood. David slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David. The days that David reigned over Israel were 40 years. 7 years he reigned in Hebron, and 33 years he reigned in Jerusalem. Solomon sat on the throne of David his father, and his kingdom was established greatly. Then Adonijah, the son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon. She said, Do you come in peace? He said, In peace. He said, Moreover, I have something to tell you. She said, Say on. He said, You know that the kingdom was mine, and that all Israel set their faces on me that I should reign. However, the kingdom is turned about, and has become my brother's, for it was his from the Lord. Now I ask one petition of you, don't deny me. She said to him, Ask. He said, Please speak to Solomon the king, for he will not tell you no, that he give me Abishag the Shunammite as a wife. Bathsheba said, Well, I will speak for you to the king. Bathsheba therefore went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah. The king rose up to meet her, and bowed himself to her, and sat down on his throne, and caused the throne to be set for the king's mother, and she sat on his right hand. Then she said, I have one small petition to ask of you. Please don't deny me. The king said to her, Ask on, my mother, for I will not deny you. She said, Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adonijah your brother as a wife. King Solomon answered his mother, Why do you ask Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom also, for he is my elder brother, even for him, and for Abiathar the priest, and for Joab the son of Zeruiah. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, saying, God do so to me and more also, if Adonijah has not spoken this word against his own life. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, who has established me, and set me on the throne of David my father, and who has made me a house, as he promised, surely Adonijah shall be put to death this very day. King Solomon sent by Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he fell on him so that he died. To Abiathar the priest the king said, Go to Anathoth, to your own fields, for you are worthy of death, but I will not at this time put you to death, because you bear the ark of the Lord God before my father David, and because you were afflicted in all in which my father was afflicted. So Solomon thrust out Abiathar from being priest to the Lord, that he might fulfill the word of the Lord, which he spoke concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh. The news came to Joab, for Joab had turned after Adonijah, though he didn't turn after Absalom. Joab fled to the tent of the Lord, and caught hold on the horns of the altar. It was told King Solomon, Joab is fled to the tent of the Lord, and behold, he is by the altar. Then Solomon sent Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, saying, Go, fall on him. Benaiah came to the tent of meeting, and said to him, Thus says the king, Come out. He said, No, but I will die here. Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, Thus said Joab, and thus he answered me. The king said to him, Do as he has said, and fall on him, and bury him, that you may take away the blood, which Joab shed without cause, from me and from my father's house. The Lord will return his blood on his own head, because he fell on 2 men more righteous and better than he, and killed them with the sword, and my father David didn't know it. Even Abner, the son of Ner, captain of the host of Israel, and Amasa, the son of Jether, captain of the host of Judah. So shall their blood return on the head of Joab, and on the head of his seed forever. But to David, and to his seed, and to his house, and to his throne, shall there be peace forever from the Lord. Then Benaiah the son of Jehoiada went up, and fell on him, and killed him, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. The king put Benaiah the son of Jehoiada in his place over the host, and Zadok the priest did the king put in the place of Abiathar. The king sent and called for Shimei, and said to him, Build here a house in Jerusalem, and dwell there, and don't go forth from there anywhere. For on the day you go out, and pass over the brook Kidron. Know for certain that you shall surely die, and your blood shall be on your own head." Shimei said to the king, "The saying is good. As my lord the king has said, so will your servant do." Shimei lived in Jerusalem many days. It happened, at the end of 3 years, that 2 of the servants of Shimei ran away to Achish, son of Maacah, king of Gath. They told Shimei, saying, "Behold, your servants are in Gath." Shimei arose and saddled his donkey and went to Gath to Achish to seek his servants, and Shimei went and brought his servants from Gath. It was told Solomon that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and was come again. The king sent and called for Shimei and said to him, "Didn't I adjure you by the Lord, and protest to you, saying, Know for certain that on the day you go out and walk abroad anywhere, you shall surely die? And you said to me, The saying that I have heard is good. Why then have you not kept the oath of the Lord, and the commandment that I have charged you with?" The king also said to Shimei, "You know all the wickedness which is in your heart, that you did to David my father. Therefore the Lord shall return your wickedness on your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before the Lord forever." So the king commanded Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and he went out, and fell on him so that he died. The kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon. Chapter 3. Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter, and brought her into the city of David, until he had made an end of building his own house, and the house of the Lord, and the wall of Jerusalem round about. Only the people sacrificed in the high places, because there was no house built for the name of the Lord until those days. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. 1,000 burnt offerings did Solomon offer on that altar. In Gibeon the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." Solomon said, "You have shown to your servant David my father great loving kindness, according as he walked before you in truth, and in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with you. And you have kept for him this great loving kindness, that you have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of David my father, and I am but a little child. I don't know how to go out or come in. Your servant is in the midst of your people which you have chosen, a great people that can't be numbered nor counted for multitude. Give your servant therefore an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil, for who is able to judge this your great people?" The speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. God said to him, "Because you have asked this thing, and have not asked for yourself long life, neither have asked riches for yourself, nor have asked the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice, behold, I have done according to your word. Behold, I have given you a wise and an understanding heart, so that there has been none like you before you, neither after you shall any arise like you. I have also given you that which you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be any among the kings like you all your days. If you will walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David did walk, then I will lengthen your days." Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream, and he came to Jerusalem, and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings, and offered peace offerings, and made a feast to all his servants. Then there came 2 women who were prostitutes to the king, and stood before him. The one woman said, "O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. It happened the 3rd day after I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we 2 in the house. This woman's child died in the night because she laid on it. She arose at midnight, and took my son from beside me while your handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and she laid her dead child in my bosom. When I rose up in the morning to give my child milk, behold, he was dead. But when I had looked at him in the morning, behold, it was not my son whom I bore. The other woman said, No, but the living is my son, and the dead is your son. The first replied, No, but the dead is your son, and the living is my son. This is what they spoke before the king. Then the king said, The one says, This is my son who lives, and your son is the dead. And the other says, No, but your son is the dead, and my son is the living. The king said, Give me a sword. They brought a sword before the king. The king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one, and half to the other. Then spoke the woman whose the living child was to the king, for her heart yearned over her son, and she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no way kill him. But the other said, It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him. Then the king answered, Give her the living child, and in no way kill him. She is the mother of him. All Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. Chapter 4. King Solomon was king over all Israel. These were the princes whom he had: Azariah, the son of Zadok the priest; Elihoreph and Ahijah, the sons of Shisha, scribes; Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud the recorder; and Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, over the host; and Zadok and Abiathar were priests; and Azariah the son of Nathan was over the officers; and Zabud the son of Nathan was chief minister and the king's friend; and Ahishar was over the household; and Adoniram the son of Abda was over the men subject to forced labor. Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel, who provided food for the king and his household. Each man had to make provision for a month in the year. These are their names: Ben-Hur, in the hill country of Ephraim; Ben-Deker in Makaz, and in Shalbim, and Beth-Shemesh, and Elon Beth-Hanan; Ben-Hesed in Araboth; to him belonged Soko, and all the land of Hepher; Ben-Abinadab, in all the height of Dor; he had Taphath, the daughter of Solomon, as wife; Baana, the son of Ahilud, in Taanach, and Megiddo, and all Beth-Shean, which is beside Zarethan, beneath Jezreel, from Beth-Shean to Abel-Meholah, as far as beyond Jokmeam; Ben-Geber, in Ramoth-Gilead; to him belong the towns of Jair, the sons of Manasseh, which are in Gilead; even to him belong the region of Argob, which is in Bashan, 60 great cities with walls and brazen bars; Ahinadab, the son of Edo, in Mahanaim; Ahamaz in Naphtali; he also took Basemath, the daughter of Solomon, as a wife; Baana, the son of Hushai, in Asher, and Baaloth; Jehoshaphat, the son of Paruah, in Issachar; Shimei, the son of Elah, in Benjamin; Geber, the son of Uri, in the land of Gilead, the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and of Og, king of Bashan, and he was the only officer who was in the land. Judah and Israel were many as the sand which is by the sea in number, eating and drinking, and making merry. Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the river to the land of the Philistines, and to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. Solomon's provision for one day was 30 measures of fine flour, and 60 measures of meal, 10 fat oxen, and 20 oxen out of the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides harts and gazelles and roebucks and fattened fowl. For he had dominion over all the region on this side of the river, from Tiphsah even to Gaza, over all the kings on this side of the river, and he had peace on all sides round about him. Judah and Israel lived safely, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. Those officers provided food for King Solomon, and for all who came to King Solomon's table, every man in his month. They let nothing be lacking. Barley also and straw for the horses, and swift steeds they brought to the place where their officers were, every man according to his charge. God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding in great measure, and very great understanding, even as the sand that is on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east, and all the wisdom of Egypt, for he was wiser than all men. Then Ethan the Ezrahite, and Haman, and Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all the nations round about. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon, even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of animals, and of birds, and of creeping things, and of fish. There came of all peoples to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all the kings of the earth, who had heard of his wisdom. Chapter 5. Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon, for he had heard that they had anointed him king in the place of his father, for Hiram was ever a lover of David. Solomon sent to Hiram, saying, You know how that David my father could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God, for the wars which were about him on every side, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. There is neither adversary nor evil occurrence. Behold, I purpose to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spoke to David my father, saying, Your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, he shall build the house for my name. Now therefore command that they cut me cedar trees out of Lebanon, and my servants shall be with your servants, and I will give you hire for your servants according to all you shall say, for you know there is not among us any who knows how to cut timber like the Sidonians. It happened, when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be the Lord this day, who has given to David a wise son over this great people. Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, I have heard the message which you have sent to me. I will do all your desire concerning timbers of cedar and concerning timbers of fir. My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon to the sea, and I will make them into rafts to go by sea to the place that you shall appoint me, and will cause them to be broken up there, and you shall receive them, and you shall accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. So Hiram gave Solomon timbers of cedar and timbers of fir according to all his desire. Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food for his household, and 20 measures of pure oil. This is what Solomon gave to Hiram year by year. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the two made a league together. King Solomon raised a levy out of all Israel, and the levy was 30,000 men. He sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month at a time. A month they were in Lebanon, and 2 months at home. Adoniram was over the men subject to forced labor. Solomon had 70,000 who bore burdens, and 80,000 who were stone cutters in the mountains, besides Solomon's chief officers who were over the work, 3,300, who bore rule over the people who labored in the work. The king commanded, and they hewed out great and costly stones, to lay the foundation of the house with work stone. Solomon's builders, and Hiram's builders, and the Gebalites did fashion them, and prepare the timber and the stones to build the house. Chapter 6. It happened in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Ziv, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. The house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length of it was 60 cubits, and the breadth of it 20 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. The porch before the temple of the house, 20 cubits was the length of it, according to the breadth of the house, and 10 cubits was the breadth of it before the house. For the house he made windows of fixed lattice work. Against the wall of the house he built stories round about, against the walls of the house round about, both of the temple and of the oracle, and he made side chambers round it. The nethermost story was 5 cubits broad, and the middle was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For on the outside he made offsets in the wall of the house round about, that the beams should not have hold in the walls of the house. The house, when it was in building, was built of stone made ready at the quarry, And there was neither hammer, nor axe, nor any tool of iron heard in the house while it was being built. The door for the middle side chamber was in the right side of the house, and they went up by winding stairs into the middle story, and out of the middle into the third. So he built the house and finished it, and covered the house with beams and planks of cedar. He built the stories against all the house, each 5 cubits high, and they rested on the house with timbers of cedar. The word of the Lord came to Solomon, saying, Concerning this house which you are building, if you will walk in my statutes, and execute my ordinances, and keep all my commandments to walk in them, then I will establish my word with you which I spoke to David your father. I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and finished it. He built the walls of the house within with boards of cedar, from the floor of the house to the walls of the ceiling. He covered them on the inside with wood, and he covered the floor of the house with boards of fir. He built 20 cubits on the back part of the house with boards of cedar from the floor to the walls of the ceiling. He built them for it within for an oracle, even for the most holy place. The house, that is, the temple before the oracle, was 40 cubits long. There was cedar on the house within, carved with buds and open flowers. All was cedar. There was no stone seen. He prepared an oracle in the midst of the house within, to set there the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Within the oracle was a space of 20 cubits in length, and 20 cubits in breadth, and 20 cubits in the height of it, and he overlaid it with pure gold, and he covered the altar with cedar. So Solomon overlaid the house within with pure gold, and he drew chains of gold across before the oracle, and he overlaid it with gold. The whole house he overlaid with gold, until all the house was finished. Also the whole altar that belonged to the oracle he overlaid with gold. In the oracle he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. 5 cubits was the one wing of the cherub, and 5 cubits the other wing of the cherub. From the uttermost part of the one wing to the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. The other cherub was 10 cubits. Both of the cherubim were of the same measure and form. The height of the one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was it of the other cherub. He set the cherubim within the inner house, and the wings of the cherubim were stretched forth, so that the wing of the one touched the one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched one another in the middle of the house. He overlaid the cherubim with gold. He carved all the walls of the house round about with carved figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers inside and outside. The floor of the house he overlaid with gold inside and outside. For the entrance of the oracle he made the doors of olive wood. The lintel and doorpost were a 5th part of the wall. So he made 2 doors of olive wood, and he carved on them carvings of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold. And he spread the gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. So he also made for the entrance of the temple doorpost of olive wood out of a 4th part of the wall, and 2 doors of fir wood. The 2 leaves of the one door were folding, and the 2 leaves of the other door were folding. He carved on them cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and he overlaid them with gold fitted on the engraved work. He built the inner court with 3 courses of hewn stone, and a course of cedar beams. In the 4th year was the foundation of the house of the Lord laid, in the month of Ziv. In the 11th year, in the month Bul, which is the 8th month, was the house finished throughout all the parts of it, according to all the fashion of it. So he was 7 years in building it. Chapter 7. Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished all his house. For he built the house of the forest of Lebanon, and the length of it was 100 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits, on 4 rows of cedar pillars, with cedar beams on the pillars. It was covered with cedar above the 45 beams that were on the pillars, 15 in a row. There were beams in 3 rows, and a window was set over against window in 3 ranks. All the doors and posts were made square with beams, and windows were over against windows in 3 ranks. He made the porch of pillars. The length of it was 50 cubits, and the breadth of it 30 cubits, and a porch before them, and pillars, and a threshold before them. He made the porch of the throne where he was to judge, even the porch of judgment, and it was covered with cedar from floor to floor. His house where he was to dwell, the other court within the porch, was of the same work. He made also a house for Pharaoh's daughter, whom Solomon had taken as a wife, like this porch. All of these were of costly stone, even of hewn stone, according to measure, sawed with saws inside and outside, even from the foundation to the coping, and so on the outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, even great stones, stones of 10 cubits, and stones of 8 cubits. Above were costly stones, even hewn stone, according to measure, and cedar wood. The great court round about had 3 courses of hewn stone, and a course of cedar beams, like as the inner court of the house of the Lord, and the porch of the house. King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. He was the son of a widow of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass, and he was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill, to work all works in brass. He came to King Solomon and performed all his work, for he fashioned the 2 pillars of brass 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits compassed either of them about. He made 2 capitals of molten brass to set on the tops of the pillars. The height of the one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. There were nets of checkerwork and wreaths of chainwork for the capitals which were on top of the pillars, 7 for the one capital, and 7 for the other capital. So he made the pillars, and there were 2 rows round about on the one network, to cover the capitals that were on the top of the pillars, and so he did for the other capital. The capitals that were on the top of the pillars in the porch were of lily work, 4 cubits. There were capitals above also on the 2 pillars, close by the belly which was beside the network, and the pomegranates were 200, in rows round about on the other capital. He set up the pillars at the porch of the temple, and he set up the right pillar, and called the name of it Jachin, and he set up the left pillar, and called the name of it Boaz. On the top of the pillars was lily work, so was the work of the pillars finished. He made the molten sea of 10 cubits from brim to brim, round in form, and the height of it was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits compassed it round about. Under the brim of it round about there were buds which did compass it, for 10 cubits, compassing the sea round about. The buds were in 2 rows, cast when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, and 3 looking toward the west, and 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east. And the sea was set on them above, and all their hinder parts were inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and the brim of it was worked like the brim of a cup, like the flower of a lily. It held 2,000 baths. He made the 10 bases of brass. 4 cubits was the length of one base, and 4 cubits the breadth of it, and 3 cubits the height of it. The work of the bases was on this manner. They had panels, and there were panels between the ledges, and on the panels that were between the ledges were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the ledges there was a pedestal above, and beneath the lions and oxen were wreaths of hanging work. Every base had 4 brazen wheels and axles of brass, and the 4 feet of it had supports. Beneath the basin were the supports molten, with wreaths at the side of each. The mouth of it within the capital and above was a cubit, and the mouth of it was round after the work of a pedestal, 1.5 cubits. And also on the mouth of it were engravings, and their panels were 4 square, not round. The 4 wheels were underneath the panels, and the axle of the wheels were in the base, and the height of a wheel was 1.5 cubits. The work of the wheels was like the work of a chariot wheel. Their axles and their rims and their spokes and their naves were all molten brass. There were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each base. The supports of it were the base itself. In the top of the base was there a round compass 0.5 cubit high, and on the top of the base the stays of it and the panels of it were of the same. On the plate of the stays and on the panels he engraved cherubims, lions, and palm trees, according to the space of each, with wreaths round about. After this manner he made the 10 bases. All of them had 1 casting, 1 measure, and 1 form. He made also 10 basins of brass. 1 basin contained 40 baths, and every basin was 4 cubits, and on every one of the 10 bases 1 basin. He set the bases, 5 on the right side of the house, and 5 on the left side of the house, and he set the sea on the right side of the house eastward toward the south. Hiram made the bases, and the shovels, and the basins. So Hiram made an end of doing all the work that he worked for King Solomon in the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, and the 2 bowls of the capitals that were there on top of the pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the top of the pillars, and the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network, to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the pillars, and the 10 bases, and the 10 basins on the bases, and the 1 sea, and the 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots, and the shovels, and the basins, even all these vessels which Hiram made for King Solomon in the house of the Lord were of burnished brass. In the plain of the Jordan did the king cast them in the clay ground between Succoth and Zerathon. Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because they were exceedingly many. The weight of the brass could not be found out. Solomon made all the vessels that were in the house of the Lord, the golden altar, and the table whereupon the showbread was of gold, and the lampstands, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left before the oracle, of pure gold, and the flowers and the lamps and the tongs of gold, and the cups and the snuffers and the basins and the spoons and the fire pans of pure gold, and the hinges, both for the doors of the inner house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the house, even of the temple, of gold. Thus all the work that King Solomon worked in the house of the Lord was finished. Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated, even the silver and the gold and the vessels, and put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. Chapter 8. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, and all the heads of the tribes, the princes of the fathers' houses of the children of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. All the men of Israel assembled themselves to King Solomon at the feast, in the month Ethanim, which is the 7th month. All the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. They brought the ark of the Lord in the tent of meeting, and all the vessels that were in the tent, even these did the priests and the Levites bring up. King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel, who were assembled to him, were with him before the ark, sacrificing sheep and oxen that could not be counted nor numbered for multitude. The priests brought in the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place, into the oracle of the house, to the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and the poles of it above. The poles were long, so that the ends of the poles were seen from the holy place before the oracle, but they were not seen outside, and they are there to this day. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables of stone, which Moses put there at Horeb, when the Lord made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. It came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon spoke, "The Lord has said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. I have surely built you a house of habitation, a place for you to dwell forever." The king turned his face about, and blessed all the assembly of Israel, and all the assembly of Israel stood. He said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who spoke with his mouth to David your father, and has with his hand fulfilled it, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city out of all the tribes of Israel to build a house, that my name might be there, but I chose David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to David my father, Whereas it was in your heart to build a house for my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless you shall not build the house, but your son who shall come forth out of your loins, he shall build the house for my name. The Lord has established his word that he spoke. For I have risen up in the place of David my father, and sit on the throne of Israel as the Lord promised, and have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. There I have set a place for the ark, in which is the covenant of the Lord, which he made with our fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt." Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread forth his hands towards heaven, and he said, "O Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you, in heaven above or on earth beneath, who keeps covenant and loving kindness with your servants, who walk before you with all their heart. You have kept with your servant David my father that which you did promise him. Yes, you spoke with your mouth, and have fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, O Lord, God of Israel, keep with your servant David my father that which you have promised him, saying, There shall not fail you a man in my sight to sit on the throne of Israel, if only your children take heed to their way, to walk before me as you have walked before me. Now therefore, God of Israel, please let your words be verified which you spoke to your servant David my father. But will God in very deed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens can't contain you, how much less this house that I have built. Yet have respect for the prayer of your servant, and for his supplication, O Lord my God, to listen to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you this day, that your eyes may be open toward this house night and day, even toward the place of which you have said, My name shall be there, to listen to the prayer which your servant shall pray towards this place. Listen to the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel, when they shall pray toward this place, yes, here in heaven your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. If a man sins against his neighbor, and an oath be laid on him to cause him to swear, and he come and swear before you in the altar in this house, then hear in heaven and do, and judge your servants, condemning the wicked to bring his way on his own head, and justifying the righteous to give him according to his righteousness. When your people Israel are struck down before the enemy, because they have sinned against you, if they turn again to you and confess your name and pray and make supplication to you in this house, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your people Israel, and bring them again to the land which you gave their fathers. When the sky is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against you, if they pray toward this place and confess your name, and turn from their sin when you do afflict them, then hear in heaven, and forgive the sin of your servants and of your people Israel, when you teach them the good way in which they should walk, and send rain on your land, which you have given to your people for an inheritance. If there be in the land famine, if there be pestilence, if there be blasting or mildew, locust or caterpillar, if their enemy besiege them in the land of their cities, whatever plague, whatever sickness there be, whatever prayer and supplication be made by any man, or by all your people Israel, who shall know every man the plague of his own heart, and spread forth his hand toward his house, then please hear in heaven your dwelling place, and forgive, and do and render to every man according to all his ways, whose heart you know. For you, even only you, know the hearts of all the children of men, that they may fear you all the days that they live in the land which you gave to our fathers. Moreover, concerning the foreigner, who is not of your people Israel, when he shall come out of a far country for your name's sake, for they shall hear of your great name, and of your mighty hand, and of your outstretched arm, when he shall come and pray toward his house, hear in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all that the foreigner calls to you for, that all the peoples of the earth may know your name, to fear you, as does your people Israel, and that they may know that this house which I have built is called by your name. If your people go out to battle against their enemy, by whatever way you shall send them, and they pray to the Lord toward the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name, then hear in heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. If they sin against you, for there is no man who doesn't sin, and you are angry with them and deliver them to the enemy, so that they carry them away captive to the land of the enemy, far off or near, yet if they shall repent themselves in the land where they are carried captive, and turn again, and make supplication to you in the land of those who carried them captive, saying, We have sinned and done perversely, we have dealt wickedly. If they return to you with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their enemies, who carried them captive, and pray to you toward their land which you gave to their fathers, the city which you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name. Then hear their prayer and their supplication in heaven your dwelling place, and maintain their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you, and all their transgressions in which they have transgressed against you, and give them compassion before those who carried them captive, that they may have compassion on them. For they are your people, and your inheritance, which you brought forth out of Egypt, from the midst of the furnace of iron, that your eyes may be opened to the supplication of your servant, and to the supplication of your people Israel, to listen to them whenever they cry to you. For you did separate them from among all the peoples of the earth to be your inheritance, as you spoke by Moses your servant, when you brought our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord God. It was so, that when Solomon had made an end of praying all this prayer and supplication to the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread forth toward heaven. He stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, according to all that he promised. There has not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by Moses his servant. The Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. Let him not leave us nor forsake us, that he may incline our hearts to him, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, and his statutes, and his ordinances, which he commanded our fathers. Let these my words, with which I have made supplication before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he maintain the cause of his servant, and the cause of his people Israel, as every day shall require. That all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord, he is God, there is none else. Let your heart therefore be perfect with the Lord our God, to walk in his statutes, and to keep his commandments as at this day. The king, and all Israel with him, offered sacrifices before the Lord. Solomon offered for the sacrifice of peace offerings, which he offered to the Lord, 22,000 oxen, and 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. The same day did the king make the middle of the court holy, that was before the house of the Lord. For there he offered the burnt offering, and the meal offering, and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar that was before the Lord was too little to receive the burnt offering, and the meal offering, and the fat of the peace offerings. So Solomon held a feast at that time, and all Israel with him, a great assembly, from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of Egypt, before the Lord our God, 7 days, and 7 days, even 14 days. On the 8th day he sent the people away, and they blessed the king and went to their tents joyful and glad of heart, for all the goodness that the Lord had shown to David his servant, and to his people Israel. Chapter 9. It happened, when Solomon had finished the building of the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all Solomon's desire which he was pleased to do, that the Lord appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your supplication that you have made before me. I have made this house holy which you have built, to put my name there forever, and my eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. As for you, if you will walk before me as David your father walked, in integrity of heart and in uprightness, to do according to all that I have commanded you, and will keep my statutes and my ordinances, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, according as I promised to David your father, saying, There shall not fail you a man on the throne of Israel. But if you shall turn away from following me, you or your children, and not keep my commandments and my statutes which I have set before you, but shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel out of the land which I have given them, and this house, which I have made holy for my name, I will cast out of my sight, and Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all peoples. Though this house is so high, yet every one who passes by it will be astonished, and shall hiss, and they will say, Why has the Lord done this to this land and to this house? And they shall answer, Because they forsook the Lord their God, who brought forth their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them and served them. Therefore has the Lord brought all this evil on them. It happened at the end of 20 years, in which Solomon had built the 2 houses, the house of the Lord and the king's house. Now Hiram the king of Tyre had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees, and with gold, according to all his desire. Then King Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they didn't please him. He said, "What cities are these which you have given me, my brother?" He called them the land of Cabul to this day. Hiram sent to the king 120 talents of gold. This is the reason of the levy which King Solomon raised, to build the house of the Lord, and his own house, and Milo, and the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, and Megiddo, and Gezer. Pharaoh king of Egypt had gone up and taken Gezer, and burnt it with fire, and slain the Canaanites who lived in the city, and given it for a portion to his daughter, Solomon's wife. Solomon built Gezer, and Beth-horon the lower, and Baalath, and Tamar in the wilderness and the land, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and the cities for his chariots, and the cities for his horsemen, and that which Solomon desired to build for his pleasure in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and all the land of his dominion. As for all the people who were left of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not of the children of Israel, their children who were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel were not able to utterly destroy, of them did Solomon raise a levy of bondservants to this day. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondservants, but they were the men of war, and his servants, and his princes, and his captains, and rulers of his chariots and of his horsemen. These were the chief officers who were over Solomon's work, 550, who bore rule over the people who labored in the work. But Pharaoh's daughter came up out of the city of David to her house which Solomon had built for her. Then he also built up Milo. 3 times a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings on the altar which he built to the Lord, burning incense on the altar that was before the Lord. So he finished the house. King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion-Geber, which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. Hiram sent in the navy, his servants, sailors who had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. They came to Ophir and fetched from there gold, 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon. Chapter 10. When the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bore spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she talked with him of all that was in her heart. Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hidden from the king which he didn't tell her. When the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the food of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their clothing, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. She said to the king, "It was a true report that I heard in my own land of your acts and of your wisdom. However, I didn't believe the words until I came, and my eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame which I heard. Happy are your men. Happy are these your servants who stand continually before you and who hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore he made you king, to do justice and righteousness." She gave the king 120 talents of gold, and a very large amount of spices and precious stones. There came no more again such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. The navy also of Hiram, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great quantities of almug trees and precious stones. The king made of the almug trees pillars for the house of the Lord, and for the king's house, harps also and psalteries for the singers. There came no such almug trees, nor were they ever seen again to this day. King Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire, whatever she asked, besides that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. So she turned and went to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. besides that which the traders brought, and the traffic of the merchants, and of all the kings of the mixed people, and of the governors of the country. King Solomon made 200 bucklers of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to one buckler. He made 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 minas of gold went to one shield, and the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with the finest gold. There were 6 steps to the throne, and the top of the throne was round behind, and there were stays on either side by the place of the seat, and 2 lions standing beside the stays. 12 lions stood there on the one side, and on the other, on the 6 steps. There was nothing like it made in any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was accounted for nothing in the days of Solomon. For the king had a navy of Tarshish, with the navy of Hiram. Once every 3 years the navy came of Tarshish, bringing gold, and silver, ivory, and apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. All the earth sought the presence of Solomon, to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. Every man brought his tribute, vessels of silver, and vessels of gold, and clothing, and armor, and spices, horses and mules, at a set rate year by year. Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, that he kept in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. The king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones, and cedars he made to be as the sycamore trees that are in the lowland for abundance. The horses which Solomon had were brought out of Egypt, and the king's merchants received them in quantities, each quantity at a price. A chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150, and so for all the kings of the Hittites, and for the kings of Syria did they bring them out by their means.